It was July 10th, 1951, Earl's Court Arena, Kennington, London, United Kingdom. When middleweight champion Sugar Ray Robinson would face Randy Turpin, who was England's, at the time, finest. See, Turpin was the middleweight champion and light heavyweight champion of England during the course of his career. But he would run into the great Sugar Ray Robinson in 1951. He would be the seventh opponent on a tour that Ray Robinson would be involved in. You see, Ray Robinson would defeat the great Jake LaMotta, Raging Bull. February 14th, 1951. It was called the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. Robinson would knock out Jake LaMotta in a technical knockout in the 13th round. Frank Sakura was a referee who would step in and tell Jake, no more. You've taken enough. So Ray Robinson was celebrating Harlem. And he would have the crowd waiting for him. It would be the greatest event in Harlem in many years. You see, William Gorilla Jones was the last black middleweight champion. And his title would be taken from him, from Martel Theo. But before William Gorilla Jones, you had Tiger Flowers, who would take the title away from the great Harry Greb in 1926. Sugar Ray Robinson was a commodity of Harlem. You see, in 1939 and 1940, he would win New York's Golden Glove. And he would turn professional the same year in 1940 on October 4th in New York's Madison Square Garden against Jose Escoveria. It would be on the undercard of the great Henry Armstrong and Fritzie Zivit. That was a world welterweight championship bout. And Ray Robinson said to himself, one day, I would like to be on that stage. And he would get that opportunity on the 20th of December, 1946, against Ohio's Tommy Bell. And after being knocked down, he would get back up and he would defeat Tommy Bell. And he himself would become a welterweight champion of the world. So after defeating Jake LaMotta, February 14th, 1951, he would have a string of fights, 11 to be exact. And he would run into Randy Turpin in his seventh and last fight on his tour. And that would be a title defense. And as a photographer who was traveling along with Ray Robinson had stated that Ray was traveling with a large entourage that consisted of a shoe shine boy, a masseuse. See, Ray Robinson had to be around a lot of people. That's just the way he was. He would have his manager, George Gankford, trainers Harry Wiley and Petey Beale. He would have a 3'8" midget, a masseuse, a famous tailor from Harlem carrying 50 tailor-made suits. And along with him, he would have a shoe shine boy who would walk on the left side of Ray Robinson. He would have a rag in hand. His job is to watch out for puddles. And immediately on contact, be prepared to wipe off the smudge of Ray Robinson's shiny shoes. It was an amazing sight that the spectators would view when Ray Robinson would get off the airplane. It was almost as though the president came in town. Ray Robinson had to be escorted by a police department. And I mean the police department. Because he was that popular in London, England. Now the thing with Ray Robinson, after winning the prestigious crown from the bull Jake LaMotta, who trained on the famous Gleason's Gym located on 149th Street, Jake took the title from Casablanca's Marcel Sedan, who retired on a stool due to a shoulder injury. And Robinson would face Jake LaMotta February 14th, 1951, the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. 13 rounds of brutal combinations, body and head. He would turn on LaMotta. He would catch him with right hand leads and triple, quadruple left hooks. Uppercuts, spin him around, and greet him with a straight right hand. And his fury went on for 13 rounds. Now, there was a point in time when LaMotta would get Ray Robinson up against the rope. He would open up with a 21-punch combination. But Ray Robinson would shoulder roll and slide half moon. He would catch most of the shots with his glove and shoulders. A few got in. But Ray knew Jake LaMotta like the back of his hands. Because that's how many times he faced LaMotta. 5 times. Up until that point. You see, he would face LaMotta in 1942. And he would defeat LaMotta. Although LaMotta was a middleweight and Ray Robinson was a welterweight. But he handled himself quite well. But in 1943, unfortunately for Ray Robinson, he would be caught with a straight right hand. And LaMotta would drop Ray Robinson through the ropes. And Ray Robinson would climb back in, but be saved by the bell at the count of 9. Now, up until that point, LaMotta was already up against Ray Robinson on the scorecards. And he would last out the round and stop Ray Robinson's 40-0 winning streak. Now, when Ray first fought Jake LaMotta, like I said, it was 1942. And like I stated, LaMotta was a middleweight. Ray Robinson was a welterweight, and they would face each other October 2nd, 1942. Ray went down in the first round, but he would get back up and win a decision. 1943, February 5th. One of the most explosive 8 rounds in boxing history. Because like I stated, Jake LaMotta would drop Ray Robinson through the ropes. Robinson would struggle to get back in time, but unfortunately for him, he was saved by the bell at the count of 9. And the Raging Bull would land a body punch before Ray went down through the ropes. And that would fracture a rib of his. But 3 weeks later, Ray Robinson would get back into the ring. And he would defeat Jake LaMotta. You see, this is what great fighters do. And there was no greater fighter than Sugar Ray Robinson. Because 33 more fights, and Ray would eventually get his opportunity against Ohio's Tommy Bell. They would fight in New York, Madison Square Garden, December 20th, 1946. Just to give you a quick stats on Ray Robinson as a fighter. As an amateur, he would have total bouts of 85 wins, 69 knockouts. 40 of those knockouts came in the very first round. As a professional, Within 2 years, 1940, he would begin his professional debut. Jose Escoveria. And he would be 40-0 before he would lose to Jake LaMotta in 1943. But in that year of 43, he would also face Henry Armstrong. And Henry Armstrong was an idol of Ray Robinson. Because in 1940, when Ray Robinson would begin his professional debut, he'd be on the undercard. When Ray Robinson would face Ray Escoveria. Now, Ray Escoveria was somewhat club fighter at that time. His real name was Joe, but his nickname was Ray. And they thought it would be a very good opportunity for Robinson to face a fighter like Joe Ray Escoveria. So on that night, Madison Square Garden, he would begin his professional debut and he would bring out the entire crowd of Harlem because he was already a commodity, winning Golden Gloves in 39 and 1940. So within 2 years, he would be 40-0. He fought 6 times, October 4th to December. In 1941, he would fight 20 times. He had a professional career, 201 fights, 174 victories, 19 losses, 6 draws, and 109 outstanding knockouts. And he would be a 5-time middleweight champion, 1-time welterweight champion. (1943 to 1951), he would have a 91 unbeaten streak. He would retire after 34 or so bouts. And he would become champion again by defeating Carl Bobo Olsen. Now, he retired in 52 after his loss to Joey Maxim at the Polo Grounds. He would be the first boxer in middleweight history to win the title 5 times. 1941, Fighter of the Year. Between 90 fights, he would once again become Fighter of the Year in 1951. And he would face Carl Bobo Olsen, Jake LaMotta, Gene Foreman, Randy Turpin. They fought Gene Foreman and Carl Bobo Olsen. Carmen Basilio, the unnamed farmer. Joey Maxim, who was light heavyweight champion. Tommy Bell out of Ohio, who had a brother by the name of Bobby Bell. Terry Downs, Paul Pender. Pender was out of Boston. Joey Giardello, who was from Cherry Hill and would eventually move to Philadelphia. He was a former middleweight champion. And he would lose his title to Dick Tiger. Ray Robinson would also be in the ring with Sammy Angot 3 times. Bo Jack, Henry Armstrong, Fritzy Zivit, Marty Servo, 74-1 before he would get a title shot. Now, Ray Robinson would meet a young man by the name of Warren Jones. And Jones would tell Ray Robinson about his uncle. His uncle's name was George Gangford. And he would introduce him to Salem's Crescent Club. His name was Walker Smith at the time. And he would be in a lot of tournaments. But in 1939, he would enter the New York Golden Gloves. And in 1940, he became Sugar Ray Robinson. Because you needed an AAU card in order to enter that event. Ray Robinson was too young at that time. He was 15 years of age when he first started his amateur career. June 24th, 1947, after 4 non-title bouts, Ray Robinson would have his first title defense against Jimmy Doyle. And he would have a premonition that he would kill Jimmy Doyle with a left hook. Now, he couldn't understand what was happening in that dream or what round that was going to happen in. So he resided and consulted with a minister and a priest. And they told him to go on with the fight because Ray Robinson was a commodity and everybody had their money on Ray Robinson. So on the night of December 10th, 1965, he would get a trophy. And while holding that trophy, he thought of Jimmy Doyle. And when he fought that fight with Jimmy Doyle, he hesitated many rounds because he didn't know which punch it was and what round was going to kill Jimmy Doyle. But he knew that was going to happen. And in the 8th round, he hit him with a left hook. And Doyle went down. And unfortunately, Jimmy Doyle died in the ring. And while holding that trophy in 1965, he was greeted by Gene Foreman, Randy Turpin, Carl Bobo Olsen, and Carmen Basilio. These were the middleweight champions who he would face to regain his championship. And the man he originally took it from, Jake LaMotta, could not attend that ceremony because he was being investigated and throwing a fight with Black Jack Tiger Fox. Ray Robinson would die 1988 at the age of 67. I met Ray Robinson twice. Discussions we had was amazing. Still had his wits about him. But in my second meeting with Ray Robinson, you can tell he started being a little forgetful. He suffered from diabetes, in which he received insulin for. What really got Ray was the disease Alzheimer's. Couldn't remember, didn't know what was happening around him. Now, what was special about Ray Robinson? He would have 12 future Hall of Fame bouts, 29 fights among them. It was 21-7. He was stopped only once. Those fighters were Sammy Angot. Angot became the Hall of Famer in 1973. He stopped Willie Pep's 62-0 winning streak. Fought him in 1941. Sammy Angot would defeat a fighter by the name of Luther Slugger White. He would become the lightweight champion of the world. And Ray Robinson had a shot at becoming a champion in 1942, but Sammy Angot couldn't make weight. Angot would wind up winning a lot of great fights with some great fighters, and he would have a record of 94-29, 8-22 KOs. Robinson would also be there with another Hall of Famer, Fritzy Zivit. 1993, he was inducted into the Hall of Fame. Fritzy Zivit had stopped Henry Armstrong in 1941. He would take his title in 1940, but Armstrong would be stopped in 1941. Fritzy Zivit had 4 brothers. He was one of 5. Eddie Zivit and Pete Zivit, and fighting family out of Pittsburgh. Robinson would also be in the ring, 1943, with the legendary Henry Armstrong. Armstrong went into the Hall of Fame in 1990. And he would take the featherweight championship belt away from Petey Cerrone in 1947. 1948, he would move up to the welterweight division and capture the belt against Barney Ross. And then he would go back down that same year in 1938. And he would defeat Lou Ambers. Now, I believe I said 1947. I'm sorry, 1937 is when he defeated Petey Cerrone. And in 1938, he would defeat Barney Ross and Lou Ambers that same year. Just want to correct myself in case I did state 1947. Lou Ambers would have a fighting career record for 152, 22, and 96. 101 knockouts. So once again, Henry Armstrong's record was 152, 22, 96, 101 knockouts. And Ray Robinson would face Henry Armstrong when Armstrong was 161 in his career. Now, Kid Gavilan was another opponent of Ray Robinson. Kid Gavilan was entered in the Hall of Fame in 1990. Ray Robinson would suffer a $5,000 fine because he was 5 ounces overweight. Gavilan had a fighting career record of 108, 35, 28 knockouts by the time he was done. So I want to stand corrected once again. Henry Armstrong's record was 152, 22, and 96, 101. It's difficult when you're doing this at the top of your head, so please excuse me. But I just wanted to break down a little bit of Ray Robinson's career because Ray Robinson, his career is overlooked. It really, really is. When you start making comparison to Ray Robinson, you're not factoring in the time he came, what he was not allowed to do. The war was frozen. So there was no title shots given. He would have had more title defenses by then. He would have accomplished so much more by then. So you can't compare Ray Robinson to a lot of the fighters today because the opportunities were not there. And I just want to be clear across the board. Now getting back to Randy Turpin. After he defeated Jake LaMotta, did Ray Robinson, when he defeated Jake LaMotta, he went on a tour. And he stopped off in France, Sunday, June 10th, 1951. And he would face Gene Woolgak. Gene Woolgak, he stopped in 6 rounds. This was in Belgium. And Gene Woolgak had also faced Marcel Sedan. Ray Robinson also faced a fighter by the name of John Bruin. Knocked him out in the 8th round, also in Belgium. Sunday, June 24th, 51, he would travel to Germany. Fight a fighter by the name of Gerhard X. And he defeated him in Berlin. Saturday, May 26th, he faced Switzerland's Gene Warnes. Defeated him. Unanimous decision in 10 rounds. Excuse me. And we stopped in Italy, July 1st, 1951, and faced Silvio Demonic. On July 10th, 1951, he would defend his crown for the first time again in England against Randy Turpin. And like I said, Randy Turpin was one of 5 brothers. He had a brother who could really fight against numerous opponents. And that fighter's name was Dick Turpin. He'd be in the ring with Davey Sands and many others. And after being greeted by a tremendous crowd, Ray Robinson just didn't take his training seriously. He was playing golf and playing cards all night. Had starlets in his room. Meanwhile, Randy Turpin was training for the middleweight championship of the world. Ray was a 4-1 favorite. But the crowd was expected to sell out of 18,000 people. Referee was Eugene Henderson. When the bell rang, Ray immediately realized stating later that Turpin was a master of defense. Very difficult to hit. You see, Ray Robinson never met a fighter like Randy Turpin. Randy Turpin had a grandfather. He's an old bare-knuckle fighter. And hold his guards up in a certain way and leaned a certain way and moved in different directions. And he taught Randy Turpin this. And Ray never really mastered how to fight a fighter like that. So eventually Ray would suffer a gash over his left eyebrow, bleeding profusely. And Petey Beal, cornerman, could not stop the bleeding. Turpin would win 15-round decision. Ray would earn $84,000 and Turpin would earn $25,000. What a night Ray Robinson would suffer his loss and not come home with the middleweight championship belt, but he wanted revenge. In that same year, he would get Randy Turpin back into the ring, this time in New York on U.S. soil. And he would defeat him in the Polo Grounds. Referee was Ruby Goldstein. But Ray would suffer a cut. Same cut he suffered when he fought Turpin in the first fight. But this time Goldstein went over to Ray's corner and said, Ray, I gotta stop this fight. The fight Dr. Nardiato is gonna make me do it. And Ray Robinson looked at Ruby Goldstein. And he looked at his corner, Harry Wild. Said, give me one more round. And Wild pled with Goldstein to give him one more chance. And he said, this is the last round. And Ray got up and met Turpin in the middle of the ring. And he jabbed and moved. And as soon as Turpin opened up with some artillery and dropped his hands, Robinson just opened up and dropped him. Took him over to the ropes. Opened up with a furious combinations. And Ray Robinson was once again the middleweight champion of the world. Phenomenal fighter was Sugar Ray Robinson. I just wish you could understand how great of a fighter he really, really was. When he died in '88, it saddened me because it meant that much to me to meet Ray Robinson. He was some fighter. The greatest, as they state, pound for pound. Salute to Ray Robinson. Salute to my subscribers. Thanks for hanging in there with me. All great fights and all great fighters will never be forgotten on my channel. When it comes to Ray Robinson, I have him ranked. Number 3 is the greatest fighter of all times. Behind Harry Greb, who I have ranked number 2. And he's behind Sam Langford, who I have ranked number 1. Shout out to the great Sugar Ray Robinson and all the great fighters of the past. Thanks for hanging in there with me. Salute to Harlem's finest. The great Sugar Ray Robinson. Now here's my brother's Curtis Anderson's number 1 greatest fighter of all time. Shout out to Curtis Anderson. But I have him number 3. Unfortunately, the war hurt him. Didn't get an opportunity to do a little bit more to get in front of Harry Greb. And Sam Langford. They went through harsher conditions, different set of circumstances, and Ray would have had to do a little bit more just to get to them. But if you say he's number 1, you'll never get an argument from me. But as pound for pound, he is the greatest. Did everything textbook. Not a greater fighter in fisticuffs than Sugar Ray Robinson. Salute.